joining us from the other side of the earth over in good old Bangkok. We have the founder of 30A. When I talk about 30A, I'm talking this brand right here, 30A brand from years ago. He is an explorer. He's an entrepreneur. He does it all. I mean, he is kind of a reason why some people say pimping ain't dead. That's because of this guy right here. Mr. Mike Ragsdale, welcome into Tigs Bits. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, man. This was so cool. When I connected with you, I was like, I can't wait, because we've been doing so Mike, I'll tell you, we've been doing the show. Like I said, there's three of us. One of them, Tigs, who started the show by himself. And he told me he was going to start a show. It's called Tigs Bits, and Tigs is his nickname. And he wanted to do little small segments. And so he did it really, I think this cup even has it still on here, kind of pixelated. That was the whole idea, right? Little bits and segments, and do little 12-minute pieces, and, you know, talking about maybe cooking or talking about food or vacationing, whatever. And he asked me to come on. And I was like, sure, I'll come on. And it was fun. We had a blast. And about 2 weeks later, he needed a guest again. He was like, hey, man, I don't have any guests. You mind coming on again? I was like, sure, why not? That was fun. So it grew and evolved where I started joining him on the show. And then our third co-host, who I'm still hoping might be able to join us here, he is everywhere. And look at there, right on cue.
Yep.
Right
Hello,
on cue.
sorry, gentlemen.
Our third, you're fine. Right on cue, our third co-host, there he is Mr. None other than JR, the handler. He is a worldwide, he's kind of like yourself. He's more nationwide, I should say. But he is. So he's a tour manager in the country music industry. He's worked for all kind of people,
awesome.
John Party, currently with Justin Moore. So he travels a lot. He's always in and out. You know, we may get him flying and landing, coming in. Maybe he's on a tour bus. So we've started doing this together, and we just like to find cool, interesting people like yourself, man, and bring them in and talk and just pick their brains. And there's really no rules or rights, and just have a good time. So welcome in. This is my buddy JR. JR, this is Mike Ragsdale.
Hey, JR.
I'm very good,
you,
sir. Nice to meet you. Thank you for taking some time to talk with us today.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be
I hear
invited.
You're coming to us from the other side of this blue round sphere we all live on.
I tell people that I don't know where you guys are right now, but if you're in Central Time Zone, we're exactly 12 hours ahead. And so, you know, I'm literally, I can't get any further away without getting closer. You know, if I go another hour, I'm on my way back. So, it's not intentional. It just happens to be where we've settled. And I try to tell my kids, it's not like I'm trying to get literally as far away as possible. But for me to get further away, Elon really needs to get this Mars thing going. That's the only way I'm going to get any further away than I am
love
right
it.
now.
Yeah, my brother actually, I've never been that far away from the U.S., but my brother was there several years ago, and his intent was to, in fact, go as far away from his house in Clearwater Beach, Florida, and it was Thailand. So that's where he ended up over there.
We really love it here, and we're just having a great time. And it's, nothing is forever, as they say. I didn't know how long when we moved to the beach. I'm kind of one of those guys that periodically I just change everything, and I don't know whether that's the entrepreneur. I don't know what it is, but periodically I just do something radically different. And I think that number one, this has always been part of our plan. We have 4 children. They're finally out of the nest. And we always said when Angela and I started our family as youngsters. And so, ironically, our 4th child was the only planned child. Angela was like, if we want any more, I want to be done by 30 so that by the time we're 50, we never had an opportunity to quote unquote date and just, we were instant family from day one. Yeah. So now that we're empty nesters and all of our children have found their own path, we just decided to pick up and go and see what it's like. And here we are, and we're enjoying every minute of it, honestly.
That's awesome.
We've got about 45 minutes with him today. And so, we could talk, as you keep digging into you, like the dive just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm like, you know what? We need 45 hours if we want to cover this. So unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of hit on some highlights of this and then tell people how to get in there so they can do the deep dive and really dive in to see what's going on, because there's so much here and so much to unpack. But the first thing that I want to talk about, and then I'm going to get into the world travel stuff, which is absolutely amazing, but is the fact that you are the founder of, we talked about earlier, the 30A brand. I mean, to me, this is synonymous with this area, which is South Walton County, in Florida, and along the beaches, one of the most beautiful areas that there is. Listeners out there have never been here. I think it's a 9-mile stretch that runs along the coast off of 98. You have this county road, Highway 30A, and there's so many different cool communities through there that are all connected with beautiful beaches and, great restaurants and different parks. And you've got, land that's preserved, and you've got these coastal dune lakes. You've got this beautiful water,
and then and don't forget world-class accommodations and beach houses and condominiums and resorts. And I mean, it is,
and chefs and food and music.
Nowadays.
It's the whole culture of this whole area, which is so cool and so laid back and so fun. And this right here, it's like, this is synonymous with the NFL. When you see the NFL logo, or you see, anything else, with Nike and the swish, to me, this really represents that. I'm not just saying that because you're on the show, but you know that, Mike. That's kind of what you created here. So talking about that, how did this actually, where did this start? Like, where was the idea? What was the inception? And then how did you get from here to, let me create a sticker, let me get it out there?
It's funny. It was exactly another moment like this where we were living in Birmingham, Alabama. And I'd had a very successful early business in my career. I mean, not right out of the gate, but, 7 years of building it, and sold at a good time. And then got literally into businesses I had no business being in, did all the dumb things, bought the restaurant, started some fitness club. I mean, I just might as well flushed my money down the toilet, and so took some hard lessons as an entrepreneur, because my first company was kind of like hitting a home run at your first at bat. And it was like, wow, that was easy. Let's just keep doing that. And then, it makes you humble when all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm not so smart. It brings you back down to reality. And I tell people that all the time. And I'm not a huge sports guy necessarily, but, if you're hitting 300, you're crushing it, and that still means you're striking out a lot. And so at all of your at bats, if you jack one out of the park on the first hit, it sends you the wrong message. And then you got to have a lot of strikeouts before you get back to that moment. So I had my share of strikeouts. And honestly, I just reached a point where I was burnt out. I was tired of losing. I was tired of failing. And my wife and I just kind of said, why don't we just pick up and go somewhere? And so we started looking at the world, and we really intended, we would have loved to have moved outside the country. That was always something we talked about. But with 4 different children at 4 different age groups at that point, we literally had primary school, middle school, high school, and one about to go to college at that time. So we couldn't wrap our heads around moving everybody, and virtual learning wasn't really a thing yet, so that just wasn't in the cards. But we knew we didn't want to get colder. So latitudinally, we just said, okay, we're not going north of where we are. We're going to go south. And we've always dreamed of living at the beach as well. So we looked, if you latitudinally, it's like, okay, Southern California, too many social issues. You've got the beaches of Texas or Louisiana or Mississippi. And, we actually started looking at Savannah. We really liked the European vibe. We liked that it had a coastal vibe. And we started gravitating toward that when someone heard that we were moving or thinking about it. And he said, I've got a house down on the bay in this little area. And we had been there before to the area. Or grew up going to Destin or Panama City. I won't specifically that area as much, but we were familiar enough with it. And so we just, within about 60 days of making the decision, we were living down at the beach and started literally just kind of like this, just started brand new. I didn't know what I was going to do to pay the bills. I had some savings, but I started doing consulting, and I was consulting for, at the time, a brand new town called Alice Beach. I was doing some public relations and marketing consulting for them. They had just broken ground. And I was also doing some consulting for a couple of other clients. But that's when I thought, people now call the area 30A, but no one called it 30A back then. The road was there, but most people called it Destin, even though Destin is in the next county, or they called it by Seaside or Watercolor or whatever community they were staying in.
Yep.
I just looked at the road and I thought, I wanted to be a writer as my next career, whether it was a novel or screenplay or whatever it was going to be. And I thought, in order to polish those creative skills, I need to start. I didn't know what blogging really was, but I'm like, I need to start writing. So I bought the URL. Again, it wasn't difficult to get because nobody really referred to the area as that. And I just started writing about our life and our move to the beach and our family's experiences with the dolphins swimming by outside the window every day. And,
What year is this, Mike? What year
that
is
was
this?
in
90s?
2000.
Somewhere in the 90s, right?
No, 2005,
Okay.
2006. That's
Okay.
when we moved. It's about 20 years ago, almost.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
I guess 15 years ago. And so I just started a blog about our family moving to the beach and our favorite places to go, our favorite places to watch the sunset, our favorite, beach bars. And people just gradually started following it. And I kept pouring. It was just a hobby. It was a passion project. It was never intended to be a business. I hired someone to design the logo, and obviously they crushed it. And I knew they were good. And then I just kept building it. And then after about 3 years of doing it as a hobby, I lost all my consulting gigs in rapid fire succession. So I was penniless, no income coming in. And I just thought, this thing seems to be getting some traction. So I'm going to double down on it. And so I ran it as a solopreneur for, maybe 7 years. And then in 2015 or so, brought in a couple partners, and they helped grow the e-commerce side of the business and some of the retail side, which is not my calling. I'm more of a community building and branding type person. So really, that was how it started, and it turned into a pretty interesting lifestyle brand after that. And I'm still involved, but not on a daily basis. I now serve in a board and advisory capacity, and we have a new CEO while we're doing our travels. So he's a CEO and partner running the operation along with my other partners and team members. And so I'm really kind of hands off at this point and letting them run the ship.
No, that's awesome. And what's cool is to watch this thing evolve over the years, where there's so many strategic partnerships that you have as well in place, where, whether it be with, the 30A Blonde, which has become just the staple beer as well down here. If you
Yep.
go to any restaurant, everybody that comes in from out of town, I'd listen. Everybody's give me the 30A Blonde, and it's so cool like to see that brand and what it's associated with, and even with community functions in this area, like every time there's something going on in the community, you don't have to look very far, and you're going to see this logo somewhere involved in that. So it's so cool, man. It's been fun to watch that whole evolution as it's kind of taking place. And I know JR, even being over there, you've seen this.
Me?
It's been everywhere.
And actually, I think the first time I ever saw a 30A sticker was in Nashville when I was still living in Nashville around that time. Around that era, and because. Like you said, Mike, before that, we called it going to Grayton, or a lot of times it was just south of Destin, between Destin and Panama City. You didn't,
Exactly.
you unless you knew somebody from there, there weren't hotels necessarily. Most people knew it from our age because Chad and I went to Troy State University together in the 90s, early 2000s, before I was on my way out. You just knew it as where the Red Bar is. Basically, that was a big. That was you go down that road to get to the Red Bar, but everybody knew.
And the Red Bar wasn't even there till 95. And growing up as a kid in high school, I had a buddy of mine had a house at Seagrove Beach, and the only thing there was the Wheelhouse restaurant. We'd get up in the mornings to go eat the Wheelhouse. Other than that, it was.
And I know even in probably when whatever year would have been, Chad, you'll know this. Gabe Taylor would have been as he would have been coming through as a new guy in college. His grandparents had a place down there, and it had to be 3.5 acres. On the water, big bay. You could walk out on the big sandbar out there. It was beautiful, and that was right before the explosion out there. With it going like it has. Yeah. But I remember even then, you just knew it as Grayton, or the community. But now it is officially 30A, and you hear that in from television, movies, magazines. Like Chad said, I travel around the country a good bit, and it's certainly a Southern thing all over the South. I'm in Gulf Shores now, and half the people here think we're part of 30A. So that because you see the stickers, it's local with the AL or it's 30A or a Floribama sticker, But it's definitely a great thing to put all of them together and shine the light on it. And what it's become is fantastic, and it's just really interesting on how that all went down. It's a Heck of a story.
Well, I followed the great beach master. I looked at
Yeah.
Margaritaville, and I found it really interesting what Jimmy Buffett did. He created this ecosystem around his music, and he doesn't. I mean, obviously, he's no longer with us, but he didn't own casinos or burger joints or anything. All
Right.
that's licensing, and so our company is kind of two sides. There's the media side, which is where I worked, which is more of the community building and the mobile apps and the radio station and the videos, and then there's the licensing side, which is the Beach Happy Cafe and the 38 Beach Blonde Ale and all of the different partnerships. And so we really kind of looked at that model, and it made a lot of sense, to kind of build passion around a brand, find your audience, and then partner with people who make amazing products and lend your logo to that. And that basically becomes their marketing budget. So yes, they may have to pay royalties, but they don't have to market as hard, because when people see that iconic blue dot, they know that that's been, kind of sanctioned by the
It's
tribe,
official,
if you
right?
will.
It's like the blue check mark.
This is maybe the coolest thing ever. I just gotten a new license plate, and I've always got just a standard operating license plate, right? And I walked in, and I was like, you know what? I saw that "Don't Tread on Me." I was like, I want to get the "Don't Tread on Me," and I got it. It is a good one. It's great, and I've got it on my car and everything. Literally within a week later, I'm pulling out of Publix, and there's this car in front of me, and I see this license plate, and I'm like, dude, they just took a 30A sticker and stuck it on their license plate. I was like, they're going to get in trouble. Like, I was sitting there looking, I was like, you can't do that. No, they didn't do that. Like in Florida right now, you can get, I mean, there it is. That is the sample license plate. You can get a 30A license plate, which actually supports,
Right.
Scenic Walton. How pimp is
It's
that,
official.
dude? I don't know any other private company on earth that has
It-
their logo on a license plate.
It took almost 10 years to pull that off. And, 100% of the proceeds go to Scenic Walton, which is the organization that works on beautification projects and improvements for like bike paths and undergrounding utilities. So they keep 100% of the money. So essentially it's one of those things where it's kind of a win for everybody, because our company, who really sponsored it and got behind it and promoted it, we get, of course, the branding.
Yeah.
They get 100% of the money, and the money goes to the community, which improves the community. So it's kind of I love win-win-win type situations, where if you find something where everybody gets something, it was a nice partnership, and continues to be.
And critical to keeping what makes it so special to be down here on the Gulf Coast, still there for generations to come.
Well, that's
absolutely.
right, and that's I get too much credit. I appreciate it, but the reality is the wave of development was coming. I mean, it's not like they were going to get to the Walton County state line and just say, well, I guess we can't go any further. But Destin and Panama City, it was coming, and Walton County was just the last developed. I think we get credited or blamed with the explosion of development, but that was already happening. I mean, Alice Beach was there, Rosemary Beach was there, Watercolor was there, Sandestin was there, Seaside was there. All of those communities were there. All of the lots were being built on, etc. We just arrived at a point in time where there was no brand for the area. It was inevitable that it was going to become overdeveloped or developed. What I'd like to think we did is we tried to be the voice for how our community wanted to be perceived. And so instead of, Porsches and Lamborghinis, a South Beach type vibe, we wanted like old Broncos and, cut the top off your beach truck. We wanted it to be about bicycling. We wanted it to be about nature trails and kayaking and paddleboarding, not about bungee jumping and banana boat rides. And, there's nothing wrong with that, but the other communities offer that. So we wanted to position 30A as
the jam band of the outfit. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yes,
And just a return to nature, and a return to hanging out on the beach and finding a cool beach bar and eating great food, but not in a pretentious way. We wanted it to be a place where you could pretty much eat great food, but you could do it in flip-flops and shorts and a t-shirt. And I think that's what we wanted to be, was the voice to say, hey, this is the 30A vibe. This is what's accepted here and what's not. And I don't mean legally, but I just mean at some point you felt like it seemed inappropriate to drive a
Right.
Maserati or something along
Right.
30A.
Yes.
It's much better to have a beat up old Jeep.
Well, like
It's
you
much
said,
cooler,
you knew that you knew they were
It's much
coming, so you
cooler.
wanted to set the precedent. You want to set the dress code at the door. You're
Let's
like, look,
control
this is
this
how we're
action.
rolling around here. Come on, get with it. You can do whatever you want, but just a heads up, this is how we're going to roll. And everybody followed
That's
suit because everybody that goes down there, it seems like as soon as they cross the county line, they go to jam band mode. You know what I mean? The shoes come off. The shades are on. It's relaxed.
Let's relax. Yeah, let's just hang out.
That's awesome. That's a great way to look at it too. I've never really thought about it until this conversation, but that's it's a beautiful way to look at it. And like you said, it's coming either way. It just needed. It's better to caress and form it as it's coming than just let it hit you right in the face. And I've seen that down here, and I've said that for years. I lived in Nashville, left there about the time it started its explosion. Then in Gulf Shores have seen exponential growth in the past decade and being in Gulf Shores. So, but it's coming. I mean, I knew that in Nashville all those years when I lived there. I was thinking, man, yeah, it's a great place. It's like Atlanta, but no traffic, and it's in these hills that are green, and there's land. You could buy a house for normal price. And then same when I got out of there to come here, it was. But you knew it's coming because it's just inevitable. It's going to happen.
And there's only so much water, and only so much coastline, and people are going to continue to flock to those areas, wherever that is. So and from an infrastructure standpoint, what Walton County did a long time ago, which was fantastic, is that height restriction, and that helped actually to drive what you were trying to drive, and the initiative to to set a certain feel, because it starts with we don't have giant condos.
There are two big things that really differentiate the area. One is that, you cannot build over 50 feet or 40 feet. So it's basically 4 stories tall as high as you can build in the county. So you're not going to have those monolithic high rises that just block the water.
So lucky y'all passed
that. The second, though, is that 40.
Oh, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We owe a lot to the people who were the pioneers. And also 40% of the land between Choctawhatchee Bay and the Gulf is protected preserve. So we've got 5 state parks and we've got Point Washington State Forest. So all of that land is undevelopable. And so between the height restrictions and the 40% of land being forested, and that's what's going to help ensure it maintains its integrity. Even though there's going to be development, that's going to really do a lot to keep the personality of the area intact.
Beautiful, and it'll keep that vibe there. We don't have that here, unfortunately. Gulf Shores and Orange Beach have mega condos now. I still feel like it's under control for the moment. We'll see how it goes in another decade. But the being able to manage both and have the other, like here we have Gulf State Park, same thing, and it's a huge piece of land there that'll never be developed. So having that is crucial. Having the 40%, it's the same deal. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Mike, I want to close out on this, and I want to move over just for a few minutes. I got to get into some of these stories I've read on your world travel. But before we do that, I want to poke fun at myself a little bit and talk about how much you knocked it out of the park and how I hit a big miss. So Jay Brindley, who I think you grew up with Jay, right?
Yeah. High school and grade school. Yeah, Jay. Yeah. He's an amazing guy. Fun guy.
Absolutely. And he's my former brother-in-law and still a good friend to this day. But we started a company in 1999. We looked at VRBO as they were just coming out. We said, you know what? I think there's a niche within this. We're going to start beachrentalcompany.com, and we're just going to focus on coastal properties only. And we went and spent all this money. We developed a website. We created a cool logo. We were getting businesses. They were, different, people who had properties to advertise with us. We were advertising. And then suddenly that whole .com implosion happened. And I don't know why I shook in that moment, but we both thought this is going to just die away and never be again. So we kind of lost our focus on what we should be doing, which is just kept hedging forward, which was foolish. And so we ended up selling that thing off and moving on. And what a big miss, what a big mistake, So that was my connection to doing something early on, and it just didn't happen.
I remember, I think Steve Jobs, said that he thought the difference between success and failure, like that 90% of it's persistence or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's right. There are just some thick-headed people who just, no matter how many times they take one to the head, they keep going. And that doesn't mean you should risk everything. And sometimes we all look back and think, oh, I wish I had bought property, or I wish I had done this. That's inevitable. But at the end of the day, you do find that people who are just so thick-headed, they're not smart enough to stop, that actually they end up like trudging through, and another one of my favorite quotes, I don't know whether it was one of the conquerors, the Europeans who came to Central and South America and dominated everything. I think he's famous for essentially when they landed, they burned the boats. He ordered all the ships be burned, and he said it's amazing what you can accomplish when going back isn't an option. And so there are, it's like once your sailors see that you've burned the ships, guys, we got to make this work now. We're here. So I think that once going back isn't an option, that's also, a fuel and fodder for success. It's an interesting life lesson.
No doubt.
What I did take from that was the fact that I became more the hedgehog after that. It was like, I'm not going to be so easily shaken and moving by all these little things that happen around me. I'm going to, keep the ship heading forward. So everything's worked out pretty decent, but like that was a little bit of a big miss, unlike your giant home run. So, but now I do want to get into your world travel stuff, man. So this is like, honestly, this is the most amazing thing. We could do a whole
Hey, Blasey,
thing
before you go there, Mike, I got to know, where did you grow up, Mike? What area did you grow up in?
I grew up in Coleman, Alabama, north of Birmingham, And actually my brother, you mentioned Orange Beach. My brother just moved to Orange Beach full time about a year ago and is loving it. But we grew up in Coleman. My mother's still there. And Jay Brindley that's where we went to school. And then went to Auburn and Alabama, so I can play either side of that field.
Good move.
And,
good move if you got to be shaking hands with everybody, you know what I mean?
That's good.
Went to both, and then lived in Tuscaloosa where I met my wife, Angela, and then we moved to Birmingham. And then
that's amazing. That's amazing.
I
love the Coleman area. My assistant tour manager that I travel and work with on the road, it lives in Coleman. He's been in Coleman his whole life. Love that area.
It's a great little town. Really is a great little town.
Well, we'll have to make sure after the show, Blasey, make sure he's got my number. Get it to your brother if he ever needs anything while he's down here. Please let me know anything.
Please.
I'd love to meet him at some point. But interesting. Just was
That's
wondering
awesome.
that because we were talking about how far you're as far away as you go from Central Time Zone in America right now. I had to know where this whole journey started. So, okay, I've got a better understanding now.
Coleman, Alabama is exactly where it started.
I was 22 before I ever stepped foot on a plane. Our family, our vacations were essentially a 3-hour, if we had vacations. But I mean, you were going to Guntersville to fish, or you were going to Lookout Mountain, or you were going to maybe Chattanooga Choo Choo or something, but that was I didn't see the beach until I was maybe 8th grade, so it was a late bloomer when it came to travel, but then when I just took that first big trip, just something clicked. And then after that, I've just been wanting to go nonstop.
Yeah, I get it. I'm the same. I, growing up in a small town and moving around, I get it totally. And because I'm from Eclectic, Alabama, I grew up on Lake Martin, so I grew up there. And same thing. I went to my grandmother's in Mississippi. I went to my we did go to the beach some because Destin and Panama City were 3 hours south, so we never came to Gulf Shores Orange Beach much until I was in my teens. But then to Troy, then to Tuscaloosa, then to Nashville, then to Houma, Louisiana, where my wife's from. Then back here about 5 years ago. So I totally get it. Once I finally did get out, I made a little loop. I didn't go very far, but I made a little loop. Work gets me all over the states. I've done all 50 in Canada and Japan. Mexico. Never done any international travel, but I get enough airline time in, so I'm good for a minute. We were going to do a show this coming year, or was it this past year, in Australia. And it didn't work out. And I was looking at the travel, and I was thinking to my guys, who normally a long flight for us is 4 or 5 hours max, going to Alaska or Hawaii or something.
Yeah.
And I was going to have to tell them, y'all, it's going to be 18 hours. It's going to be a long ways.
It's a commitment to get here. That's for sure.
Anyway, all right. Well, so you made it there. You've made it from Coleman, Alabama, to across the world. And you got the bug, obviously, you said, because you were pent up. Where was the first place that you went to and thought, man, this is really cool, I'm doing this?
So the first trip I really took as a young person outside of the U.S., I worked in Yellowstone after I graduated for a little bit. So we did kind of a bunch of cross-country road trips, backpacking type stuff. But then a friend of mine, who's still my best friend, he went to teach English in Czechoslovakia right after college. And so he, talk about a brave guy, like basically moving behind the wall. I mean, now the wall had come down, but only a couple of years before that. And this was in, say, 90 or so, 91, 92. And we went to visit him in Bratislava, Czech Republic, Slovakia. Actually, Czechoslovakia split the two countries that year. And so a friend and I, for also from Coleman, picked up and flew over there and met him. And we just had the most amazing, we're in Budapest and Prague and all these places. We're staying in $5 a night, apartments in Prague, and the snow is 6 feet deep on the ground. And it was just surreal. And it was one of those things that really just opened my eyes to how much of the world was out there, and that it's not a scary place. And once you get there, everybody's the same. We all want the same things. We all want to be happy, and for our children to be happy and to live good lives. And the sketchy places often end up being my favorite because they dispel myths that our media tells us. And people talk about Thailand, they're like, oh, they're going to take your, you're going to wake up in a tub of ice cream missing a kidney, or you're going to do that, or whatever. Or people say, oh, don't wear your wedding rings, don't wear your jewelry. And it's like, you get over here and there's more wealth and affluence here than we ever thought about having. There's more Lamborghinis driving by my front door or any morning here than I ever saw in the United States. And so the wealth here is on a different level. I mean, 50% of the world's billionaires live in Asia. And so there's a lot of amazing things here, but you can also get the old stuff. So I tell people all the time, Bangkok is one of those places where if you turn left, you go 80 years in the past. If you turn right, you go 10 years in the future. And it really is like that you're gonna, you feel like you're an avatar when you go to some of these places. The technology and you go to restaurants and there are robots bringing your order instead of people. There's crazy stuff, but you can also go out and eat lunch for $2 at a street food place, or $1.50 or $1, and get an amazing lunch or breakfast. We eat street food every morning for breakfast. We've got our dog here with us. So we flew here with our dog, and our dog is a celebrity. We walk down the streets and every local knows him and has to stop and talk to him. They have no idea who we are, but they stop and talk to our dog every morning. And it's really a different way of life. And it's just fun to you feel like you're on an adventure every day, when you wake up.
Oh, I bet so. I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, like we talked earlier, JR, before you hopped in. I mean, I think you visited at least minimum over 60 countries around the world that you've been to. Like even like you said, with your kids to begin with, and then even now post, you guys still travel from Bangkok as kind of your hub. I mean, what's like probably the craziest adventure? Like, I know you got a bunch of them probably, right? But like, what comes to the top of your mind of like one of the craziest adventures you've ever had? While traveling.
There's like Myanmar was amazing. We've been there a couple times, right? We went there with our kids in 2010, and Myanmar has been controlled by the military for 100 years, 80 years. And when we were there in 2010, no diplomat, no American had been there in an official capacity in 80 years, so it was very closed society. But when we got there, we went through a lot of culture shock right at first, but we were there with our two youngest children, and we did it, and we powered through, and it just was one of the most rewarding things we've ever done, because, we're in this country where, you feel like you're being followed sometimes, and you probably are. And it's definitely but the people were just so unbelievably friendly. And it was one of the best experiences of our life. We were there for about 3 weeks and just had so many amazing stories. I mean, even transferring money, you kind of had to do it on the black market, and so the largest denomination they had was worth at the time 90 American cents. So, and there were no ATMs, there were no credit cards, you couldn't do any of that. So you're bringing 100% cash. So I had about $2,000 I brought with me to pay for that 3 weeks. And the bills had to be pristine $100 bills. They couldn't have a stray mark. They couldn't be bent. They couldn't have a tear, nothing, or they would be rejected. But I remember exchanging the money on the black market. I had someone come to the room, and they were taking this $2,000 in cash which is the entire salary of an average person in Myanmar for a year. And
Wow.
they brought back that night about 11 o'clock at night. They bring back a hefty bag, and it was just full of rolls of cash. And so I had to empty my backpack, and everybody else had to carry my stuff because my backpack had nothing but rolls of cash. Because so those types of stories are memorable. One time we were in Bali we lived there for about 3 months, and there was we didn't know it. They in the Airbnb, it said there was a jail next door. We didn't think anything about it, but it was actually Korobakan Prison, which is one of the most infamous prisons in the world, which we didn't know at the time.
Oh,
but
wow.
while we were there one night, Angela and I had been out, and the kids were at home by themselves. I mean, we had a security guard, but he was about 87 and barefoot, so I don't know what kind of security he was really offering. But we were out with friends, and we came back, and long story short, essentially there was a riot in the prison, and we come around the corner at 1 a.m. to get to our home, and all the streets are blocked, and there's hundreds of deployed troops all around, including our street, which was a cul-de-sac along the prison wall. So I had to put on a motorcycle helmet because they were throwing Molotov cocktails and rocks and stuff over the prison wall, and I had to run down this street in my flip-flops and a motorcycle helmet, and then when I got to my house, there were people standing out in front of it, and some guy had blood on his face, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Because we were freaking out, of course, because of our kids. They were at home by themselves.
That'll sober you up.
And we got in. That'll sober me up real fast. I mean, we're running along the street. Angela's in a cocktail dress and high heels, and I'm running like I'm thinking the towers are on fire, and there's people yelling from the prison wall and stuff, and they're yelling, negotiating back and forth.
You're just like, I got to get to my kids.
I was like, Angela, get down. Like there could be snipers. I mean, they're all pointing, they're in riot gear and pointing guns, and they're telling us to get off the street and get down. And Angela's like, Mike, you can stay here if you want, but I'm going to go get the kids. I mean, you talk about feeling emasculated when your wife in a cocktail dress starts running down the street, and I'm like hiding behind a telephone pole, worried about getting sniped. And but anyway, it ended up being fine, of course. And I got to the house, and the kids were oblivious. They were playing their Halo and video games and whatever else they were playing, oblivious to everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had to wait there a night until the military evacuated us the next day. But it was that's one of the more harrowing, but for the most part, it's not as exciting as that, generally speaking.
What about
Wow. I mean, that's something though. You know what I mean? That's insane. That's something most of us don't ever experience. Thank God. Like that's wild.
Well, but there's also, we were in Laos a couple weeks ago, and Angela didn't tell me we're not extreme sports people. I'm not like a bungee jump off a bridge type guy. That's not my thing. Now, in Laos, they had this hot air balloon company, and I didn't even know, we've been in a hot air balloon once before in Myanmar, but this time we're in Laos, and I have to say it was a little sketchy. You're out there in the middle of nowhere, and the first time they even talked to us, we were already in the air, so there were like the safety briefings on the one we had in Myanmar was pretty thorough, and you had all these like, here's what to do in this situation. I mean, first time anybody even talked to us in this one, we're already in the air, and he's kind of saying, don't jump out of the basket, don't drop your phone. I mean, like, important.
We could have discussed this before we got up here.
I'm glad you said that, because I was about to hop out.
A diagram of what's going on here, at least something.
Yeah, pamphlet. So it was a little sketchy, but for the most part, we're not taking huge risks, generally speaking. We're not extreme sports people. We're going to Nepal in a couple of weeks, and we'll do some hiking, but we're not ascending to base camp or anything like that. We're going to do some hiking around the base of Everest, but we're not doing anything where you're not going to see my dead body sliding down the mountain.
I've said that before too.
I hope anyway. Knock on wood. That's not.
You got to manage these risks.
I've said that same thing.
Exactly.
If it's some extreme something, I did not say yes to doing that, because I don't even snow ski anymore.
No.
I'm good.
I'm more of I want to go see things, but I'm not. I don't want to put myself in unnecessary risk. But I do love that there's a group of people in the world called the Explorers Club, and it's essentially a country club for people who go to the moon. Literally, all the astronauts are members of it. People who, explore certain remote regions of the Amazon jungle or the Gobi Desert, and so it's a country club, and they have They have one in New York. They have one in Hong Kong. So once you're a member of this club,
Answer a quick question, Mike. Are you a member?
I've been invited, but I'm not.
Okay.
I
Well, I
just
knew
never
you were
got a.
involved, so I had to ask that
Well,
question.
but a friend of mine is involved, and he invited me, and I just haven't done it yet. But that said, they have their slogan is their mission is to clear dragons off the map, and I love that because in old maps, if you didn't know what there was, it was scary. You know, you put a dragon basically out to the side that says like, this is a danger, this is an unknown danger. And their mission is to kind of clear dragons off the map and say, oh, you don't have to worry about that. That's actually an amazing place. You shouldn't be afraid of that. And I love doing that. I love going to places like Myanmar or Bhutan or Mongolia and just saying, you know, there's nothing like it's the opposite of what you think. You're scared to go there because you're worried you're going to wake up in an ice bath missing a kidney. It's actually the opposite. It's the most incredible, amazing, friendly place. Angela could walk by herself down any dark alley at 1 a.m. We've never had any issue. I mean, crazy can happen anywhere, but we've never even so much as gotten a stink eye from anybody here. You know, it's like just the opposite. It's so friendly, so inviting, so safe. I encourage.
I was going to say I could
visit.
name at least 5 cities within driving distance of my house that I would not encourage anyone to walk down a dark alley at 1 a.m.
I'll tell you, I've often told people, this is no joke. If gun to my head, somebody said you can send your 15-year-old daughter, if you had a 15-year-old daughter, you have a choice. Any major American city for one night, 24 hours with no money, or Thailand for a month with no money. Which do you pick? She's going to Thailand. Not even a question. Like, I mean, like before I would send her to New Orleans or Atlanta or Baltimore or Detroit or Nashville or anywhere, I would send them to Thailand for a month without even thinking about that because they're going to be in a much better position than being without money in New Orleans for a night.
Right.
I mean,
Wow.
It's a profound difference.
That's a big statement there because I can't even attest to it because I've never been there, and I've talked to people who've been there, and there was a guy I used to know in Fort Walton Beach. His name was Richard. I think he owned Bangkok Cleaners, and I used to go talk with Richard. He used to go over there and spend a lot of time there, man. And he was a cool guy, and he would tell me all these stories, and I just felt like I was talking to somebody like traveling to a different planet. You know, it was like, wow, everything he describes is just so different than here. You know, like so. I've heard all about it. It sounds great.
Are you multilingual?
I'll play tour guide. You know, I wish I was.
I'm in.
We took language lessons, but Thai language is very difficult. And that I'm lazy, but also like so a word has 5 different meanings depending on how the inflection. So a single word, if it goes up or down or mid-tone or down up or up down, the same word has 5 radically different meanings. So it's kind of like meat and meat has 2 different meanings, even though it sounds the same to us, but every single word has 5 different meanings, and it's all about inflection. And that's very difficult for my brain to work with. So fortunately, most people here speak English. It's and really in a lot of the world, you're in pretty good shape if you speak English, quite frankly. But here in Thailand, most people speak English, and it's not a challenge. And these days with the technology, with Google Translate and everything else, if we go into a restaurant and the menu is just all Thai, we can use Google Translate, take a picture of it.
Cell service all over the world, pretty good.
That's it. It's better here than it is in the States, better here than it is on 30A. I mean, I've got my internet, my phone plan is 5G unlimited everything for $10 a month. Okay, not bad compared to the $100 a month I was spending back home per phone. And the internet plan is, my internet is 800 gigabytes up, down, you know, for $20 a month, you know, and it's just
beautiful. Well, you meant
that is
being the founder of 30 Acres, we automatically assume and should know that the number one most beautiful beaches in the world are right there on 30A. Well, who's number 2 and 3?
It's interesting you should say that because I remember before we went to Bali, my friend Jeff Archer, who founded the YOLO board brand, he told me he lived in Bali for a number of years, and actually his buddy from LSU still lives there. And they were business partners, so they would import teak furniture to the 30A area from Bali, and basically would go into a lot of these high-end homes. And he told me, go ahead and get it out of your head that the beaches are going to be amazing, because he said, you already live on the best beach in the world, on 30A. But he said, you're going to love Bali. Just get it out of your head that the beaches are going to be dramatically better. And he was right. I mean, you can find in the Caribbean or other places, you can find pockets of paradise where there truly is an epic beach, but it's difficult to find one that's livable. I mean, you can find one that you can be ferried out to and spend a few hours, but in terms of finding a place where you are on that sugar white sand and the crystal clear water like you have in Orange Beach and Gulf Shores as well, it's really difficult to find that. Now, I will say that we recently, Chad mentioned that we took a trip down to the islands here in Thailand, and there are some amazing places, but we did find a place called Koh Mak, and Koh Mak is an island that's pretty small. We also went to the neighboring island called Koh Kood, and I will tell you that in all of our travels, it's as close to the tropical paradise as we've ever found, in terms of a true, you know, like you've got everything. You've got the palm trees, you got the beach bars, you've got the laid back vibe, you're in the jungle. It feels like that tropical paradise that you've always thought existed but haven't found. And when you do find what was a tropical paradise, it's overrun with tourism and it's over touristed. This is the opposite. So if you're looking for that paradise when you come here, there's a place called Koh Mak or Koh Kood. It's an hour flight away, and it's as close as we've ever found in all of our travels to that picture postcard perfect beach. And our room was beachfront. And I say room, it's a bungalow, so it's a standalone building, 2 stories. I mean, it's got an upstairs deck, beachfront, like 20 steps to the water, perfectly calm water, and all in, including tax and breakfast, was about $108 a night.
Are you kidding me?
No, and that includes your paddle boards and your kayaks, and that includes,
oh my God.
If you want a scooter, a motorbike for the day, it's $3 a day for 24 hours, so you just rent a scooter and drive all through the jungle and the mountains, and it's pretty amazing.
And how far is that so did you drive there? Did you fly there? How'd you get there?
So it's about probably a 4-hour, 5-hour drive, but then you take a 1-hour ferry. But we flew, so it's a 45-minute flight, and then we took the ferry that's, again, a little bit less than an hour to the island. And once you're on the island's very small. You can cross the whole thing in 20 minutes on a motorbike, so it's not a huge island. But the beaches are we were the only people there. I mean, it just felt like it's off season because it's the rainy season here. But there was just nobody there. There were a couple other guests that we saw, but we pretty much had the whole resort to ourselves. And
wow. Yeah, I'm sold.
$100
and Mexico at one point was that way. It's just like you said, it's the corruption and the things that gone on in their country, and there's some pockets like that. Man, that's good. Yeah. That's encouraging to all. I'm sure everyone watching or listening, that there are some pockets out there of the real paradise that haven't been overpopulated and over touristed yet. So that's interesting to know.
Yeah. Yep. Got to go check it out. Hey, Mike, I've got to ask you about this. I was reading some extra stuff on you because I've known you for years and what you've done and everything, but I was digging in a little bit more and I learned so much more. There's one thing that really jumped off the page, and I've got to bring this up. I mean, looks like you and Hugh Hefner used to hang out a little bit. Like, can you give me a little? And I know we're up against it. We're actually probably over, but I got to fit this in somehow.
I got nowhere to be and all day to get there. So
okay, sounds good.
So when I graduated college, I couldn't get a job. I mean, I was floating resume. I graduated with a master's degree in advertising. And the only reason I got my master's degree is because I couldn't get a job with my undergraduate degree. So I was floating resumes. I was doing interviews and nobody would hire me. So I really became an entrepreneur out of necessity. I started doing consulting work for a professor who was more of an entrepreneur than a professor. He always had side hustles going on. So I just started doing survey tabulation, anything you needed done, basic graphic design. And then I started doing more and more jobs like that. Well, one of the things I did was took out a small business loan to buy a computer because I'd never owned a computer and I needed one to kind of do some of these consulting things. And it came with this little thing called an AOL disk. And an AOL disk, for our listeners or viewers who don't remember, it was basically the embryonic stages of the internet. And this is before the web existed. But I plugged this thing in and you got 10 free hours. And you guys remember, think about, for anybody who's younger than this, you would pay $3.95 an hour to be on the internet. And the internet was so slow that it might take you 10 minutes to download a single photo, much less, there were no videos or anything like that. So I started using this thing called the internet and was really mesmerized by it and blown away by it. And I pitched AOL on an idea. And much to my surprise, 2 months later, I got a call from somebody saying, hey, we want you to come up to DC and tell us a little bit about what you're thinking. So a couple of friends and I drove up on a whim. I mean, we had no money. We drove straight through. I mean, it was about a 20-hour drive, and we stayed together in a Comfort Inn room near their offices. And we went in our J.C. Penney finest Sunday suits and basically looked like a bunch of idiots. I mean, we bombed. I mean, totally did not impress them. The idea impressed them, but the three rednecks, showing up in cheap suits, trying to pretend that we were businessmen was not impressive to them. And we knew the idea was great. In fact, we found a quote in the Washington Post or Washington Times, I don't remember which one, but where one of the top guys at AOL was bragging about our idea, before we had even done. So we knew that they loved the idea. They just didn't have confidence that we were savvy enough or committed enough to deliver. And one of my friends was in law school at Chapel Hill at the time, so he was going to have to quit law school. There were all sorts of complications. But long story short, we pitched them again. We came back about a month later, and this time we came in like rock stars with blue jeans and t-shirts and just more of an attitude, which is what they were looking for. They were looking for people to shake up the industry. So we came in and we launched the world's first humor site on AOL. This again before the web. We launched one of the world's largest. It became the number one humor site on the internet. Then we launched a video game site. So we were.
So this is all like pre-95 type stuff, right?
This was in 95. Yeah, 95 is when we really launched. Yep. And the web came out in 96.
Yeah.
But it still took a few years for the web to become anything usable. It was just very sketchy at the time. But somebody, I wish I could say that we were really smart and we wanted to get in the video game space. It was the opposite. Somebody at AOL mentioned, if you guys reviewed video games, people would send you video games all the time. We're like, really? And so we went and started a video game site. And sure enough, next thing you know, we got 10 games a day coming in for Sega Genesis or Nintendo or whatever. So our day was making South Park like humor and Monty Python like humor and also playing and reviewing video games. So we ended up creating this dream Gen X fantasy for 25-year-old kids. And we built the company to about 70 employees. And, we were a content studio in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, of all places, but then moved to Birmingham at some point to be closer to the airport. And we were doing a lot of traveling. And at some point, we got approached by somebody at Playboy who knew of our reputation at AOL. We had become the number one content studio on AOL. And they were trying to become more than just what Playboy's known for historically in terms of the nude stuff, but they were trying to become the brand for men who sports scores, video games, stocks, whatever it was that men were interested in. They wanted to become a hub for that. So they hired us to provide humor content, video game content, sci-fi, fantasy content, all the geeky guy stuff. And so, one thing led to another. Next thing you know, we're doing Playboy Mansion parties, and we're doing, we're covering things. And we had they threw a party for our company there one time that was catering to the video game industry. So we had all these studio executives from video game companies there, just kind of schmoozing them. So we hung out at the mansion a few times over the years, and it was got to Christy Hefner. Christy was running the company. His daughter was running the company at the time, and got to know her well, and had a few meetings and dinners here and there with some big wigs. So it was a very unique period of time. That's for sure. That was the late 90s.
One of those things.
Wow.
That is probably a teenager. You're never wasn't even a dream of yours to one day hang out there and think that would ever be anything.
It might have been a dream, but it was not an achievable.
Right.
But it really was. It was cool to be able to. I knew that when he died, that was the end of an era, and it was cool because Playboy's kind of had its, like all brands, they all go through peaks and valleys, and they had their heyday, but then they had really gone into hibernation. And it wasn't until the Girls Next Door, whatever that TV show that came out, that there was a resurged interest in the brand. And all of a sudden it was less about the pinups and it was more about the reality
Right.
TV
Yeah, the
stuff and all
storylines
the
and
other
all.
things.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we were kind of in that era where the brand had been
Right.
resuscitated, had been brought back to life, and was actually kind of on top of its game again. And I think it slipped away again, after his passing, of course. But in general, it was just a very magical time because it was the golden era of the
Yeah,
internet.
right.
I mean, this was when we were making the rules. Nobody knew what the internet was. And so, when we came along on AOL, companies only updated their content once a month. So if the
Yeah.
new Time magazine came out, they posted the new Time articles. But why would you pay $3.95 an hour to sit there and read an article that doesn't even have photos or videos? So we were actually the first people to come along and do not just daily content, but hourly content, and we always had something to, we felt of our brands more of as a place than as a
Right.
magazine, right? I mean, it's more of like a place to hang out and play games and chat and joke around. And so,
Man,
I'm
y'all were
really
so
proud of
far
that.
out in front of everything. Y'all were so far out in front of everything with this. Like
We were, but
what you're
not
saying is
because we
something
were.
today, but you did. That was even like almost pre-internet. It was pre-internet, and the internet
Yep.
came along, the World Wide Web came along, and like you guys were already had these ideas. That's amazing. Like
But
yeah.
also
It
got
was
to
a
catch the
great
end
chapter,
of
and
the
it,
old
and it really
school
is
as
similar.
well in that era. You got to catch the.
Yes.
That's right. Well, in
It's
fact,
great.
we there's a great, I don't remember which magazine it was. It was either Wired or New York Times or something. But after we had made the partnership with AOL, we had the most successful launch in AOL's history up to that time. And I remember him speaking to the media. Time Warner, which ended up getting acquired by AOL, ironically, at some point, Time Warner got upset with AOL because of us, and they specifically mentioned us, and they said, we're tired of companies like Hecklers, which was the name of our company, Hecklers getting more attention. And Ted Leonsis, who was the head of AOL at the time, he basically said, why would I pay Time Warner $10 million a year, to be on our service when I can give the Hecklers $100,000 and they quadruple your traffic, their first week. So the point is, we really were a disruptor. We were just a bunch of idiot kids who really didn't know what we were doing, but we were successful
But you
because
did.
we
Right.
didn't know the rules, right?
Yes.
They all thought two-dimensionally, and we were thinking about it, we were making stuff up. We didn't know how any of it worked, but basically they left and went to CompuServe. They took all their content off AOL because of us. They went to CompuServe, which ended up getting devoured. And then AOL ended up acquiring Time Warner at some point, or they merged and AOL. So it was kind of ironic that, again, we were in this, a bunch of
I
good old
love it.
boys from Alabama were in.
That's a success story if I've ever heard
I
it.
remember one time in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, we had our logo on the door out in just a sketchy little office in the downtown area. Back then, there was nobody downtown. And somebody knocked on our door one morning, came into our office, and they're like, is this like a satellite office or like a what? I'm like, no, this is it. But they knew our brand, and somehow we're walking along the street in
Like, that's
Tuscaloosa
the-
and saw but they didn't realize everything that was being done online was being done in this dingy little office in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. But that was the beauty of the
that's
internet.
amazing.
It was. There was no brick and mortar. That brick and mortar was
New
gone. That's right.
That's
That's
right.
right. Everything changed, man. Man, I tell you what, we could keep going and going, and I could keep going and going, but like I do want to actually let you go because I want to bring you back on at some point, and like there's so much more to dig into here at some point. So, I mean, Mike, I super appreciate you coming on and joining us tonight. This has been great. Like I could have gone, like I said, we could keep going. There's so many more rabbit holes to dive off into, and all the things that you've seen and done, the people you've hung out with. We didn't get to Richard Branson yet. You know what I mean? Like so
Yeah.
we'll save that for the next episode, right? So
Okay. Yeah. And that's we do have we don't really, we're not trying to start a new business or brand or anything, but if you
Yep.
go on YouTube to Around the World We Go, or if you go
Yep.
to aroundtheworldwego.com, we do post videos from our travels. And we've got Laos episodes coming up, and we've got Nepal coming up. But we it's not something we've done over the decades. It's just something we started a couple years ago. So I missed a lot of great stories along the way, but we are trying to do it. And it really has nothing to do with starting another brand. It has to do with, frankly, I enjoy watching these things as I get older and go, man, I forgot we did that. Like, how cool is that? And there's so many memories that have been lost to time now that I didn't document as well in, say, 2005 or 2014.
Yep.
So we are trying to make a conscious effort really for our own family. But that said, people do enjoy the videos. So if you go to aroundtheworldwego.com, it'll take you to our YouTube page where we do post some of our travels.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely do that. And guys out there in Tigsbits land, don't forget, go to tigsbits.com. We've got new merchandise. We got new hats here. JR, the handler's got a hat on. I got a hat on. Maybe I need to send you one over there. If you're
going to have to personally deliver it, guys. That's the only way I accept. You have to bring it in your carry-on.
I'd hold you to that, Mike.
I like it.
It warms my heart to know a good old boy from Coleman, Alabama, has been rocking and accomplished, and as an inspiration. You've inspired me today in this last hour we've had to talk to you. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Like I said, I hope make sure to get my number from Blasey. So pass to your brother. I'd love to meet him as well. Thank you for your time. It was a wonderful conversation. I really do hope we can have you back in the future. And I know all of our listeners and watchers are going to really enjoy this episode, because I sincerely, it's one of the best ones I've ever done. And I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing you talk today, for sure.
You're generous to say that, and it's an honor to be here. So thank you, guys.